Hello, so in today's video I'm going to be doing a book review of Women Eating by Kohda, and this is another book. I just reviewed The Apparition Phase. I said it was a book that I had seen all about Instagram and BookTube, and this is another one of those books that I have been seeing all over the place recently. A lot of people reading it on Instagram and having various thoughts about it. But once again, this was a book that I received in last month's Vulnerable Book Club, and I read the synopsis and I was really interested when I read it. It's basically a vampire coming of age story. So it follows a young woman of mixed race and she is a vampire, and yeah, it's a coming of age novel. She's trying to find her place in the world, what she's going to do with her life. She has separated from her mother. Her mother has gone to live in her home, so this is her first time living on her own, and she's trying to find her footing, trying to find out what she wants to do with her life, how to navigate different aspects of her life without her mother and being on her own, you know, making new friends. She is starting a new job in an art gallery, and one of the biggest things that centres around this book is food and how she's going to get hold of blood, because she primarily drinks pig's blood, but she's finding it really difficult to get hold of it. Her mother had set up this whole system for her when she was a child, but obviously now they're separated. She's trying to find her own way of getting hold of blood and how she's going to do it, and yeah, just surviving basically. And yeah, when I read it, I knew it was going to be a coming of age story set around vampires. It says it has lots of different themes. If I read a little bit here, it says Lydia is hungry. She always wants to try ramen, sour plums, and it goes through a list of foods, and that's very prevalent in the book. She has a habit of watching people doing mukbangs on YouTube where she watches people eat, and she's kind of has this fascination with people eating food and wondering what it tastes like, because she's never tasted it. She was she's been a vampire since very young, so she's never tasted food. She doesn't know what it tastes like, and she's fascinated by it. And it says, yes, Lydia can't eat any of this. The only thing she can digest is blood. And it turns out that sourcing fresh pig's blood in London, where she is living away from her vampire mother for the first time, is much more difficult than she anticipated. Then there are humans, people at the gallery where she interns, the strange man who follows her after the dark, and Ben, a goofy grinned artist who she develops feelings for. So yeah, she does also have a semi relationship in this with Ben. So she basically goes to live in these studio spaces which is full of artists, and yeah, she strikes up a relationship with Ben, and then eventually meets the others, people who live in the or not who live, who they're not supposed to live there, who work in these studios. And yeah, she finds out more about their lives and kind of compares her life to theirs. And yeah, I will say coming of age books aren't normally my favourite kind of books. I dip in and out of them every now and then. I knew what this was going into it, which I liked, and the thing that drew me into this was the fact that it was about, you know, a vampire. It's a different twist on the on that kind of genre, so that got me interested. But just bear in mind, they're not my favourite kind of books to read. So with this book, I have to say I did find it boring in parts, just because, I mean, I wouldn't say nothing happened, but it kind of felt like nothing happened. You know, with coming of age books, they're very much just set around when someone's a teenager, young adult, and it's normally just a little, you're reading about a little slice of their life in that moment and issues that they're struggling with. And yeah, young adult novels aren't my favourite, because I find reading from an angsty teenager's perspective annoying, and yeah, I often don't read coming of age stories because I find them boring, but I was intrigued by this one, and I kind of sat with it for a few days after I finished it. Like I said, because it's not normally the kind of book I would read, I didn't want to judge it too harshly. I wanted to sit with it for a little bit, and I did do a small like short review on my Instagram where I wrote that there were aspects that I liked about this book, but ultimately it was a little bit boring, which I still stand by. I do think that if you're not a fan of coming of age stories and you read this thinking there's going to be a little bit more to it because it's a vampire, there's not really. But yeah, it's a tough one for me to judge. I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5 because there were things I liked in this book. I liked the fact that she described loneliness quite well, about feeling lonely, about not knowing her place in the world. When she's describing certain things of her life, I felt like it described depression quite well. You know, not knowing, you know, what you're doing with your life, that kind of thing. It was well written. I was definitely, I wouldn't say hooked, but I was interested to continue reading with this book. You know, when I put it down, it wasn't like a chore to pick it back up. I was like, no, I do want to finish this to see what happens to her and, you know, where her progression goes in the story. And I also liked the talk about art in this book. I did read on Goodreads. It was quite mixed. Some people really loved this book and some people, like me, thought nothing really happened. But again, that's going to go towards your preference. And a few of the comments I saw said that they didn't enjoy the talk about art in this book because, like I said, she's an artist and she goes to work in an art gallery, and the studios that she ends up living at are all artists who live there. So there are talks about art and progression of art and, you know, what it meant to different people, and I actually quite enjoyed that because I enjoy art, both making it and, you know, discovering new artists I like. So that I actually quite liked in this book. I did quite like the main character. I wouldn't say she was like super relatable, obviously because she's a vampire, but some of the things some of the things were kind of relatable, like, you know, her obsession with food and watching food. I do feel like if you have an eating disorder or had an eating disorder, then this might be slightly triggering to you. The way she describes wanting to eat food and what it must be like, and the fact that she's never had it, and that one of her like guilty pleasures that gives her satisfaction is going onto YouTube and watching people consume food, and she kind of gets absorbed in that. And, you know, that's a whole, you know, cultural thing. I think a lot of people can understand that because mukbangs are very popular to watch on YouTube. I watch them occasionally myself. So yeah, that was interesting. There were a lot of interesting themes in this book, but obviously it didn't explore too deeply because I feel like this is more, like I said, a YA coming of age story. So it touched on a few interesting points, and again, the storyline was going in a place that I quite liked, but I just wanted a bit more. It's quite a short book. It's only about 247 pages, so it's not a large book by any means. So when I say it just kind of touched on subjects, that's what I really mean. It didn't go in depth into anything. But overall, yeah, I think when I first finished this, I gave it quite a low rating. I was probably going to give it like a 2. And I kind of dismissed it like, oh, you know, I'm glad I read it because I was interested in it, but it was a bit boring, nothing much happened. But then the more I thought about it, and the themes that this book did touch upon, I kind of bumped up to 3 stars because, like I said, I don't regret reading it. I feel like if it was on a shelf, I would have picked this up myself to read, even though I know I'm not a fan of coming of age stories, just because it was quite interesting and there was quite a lot of buzz around this. Like I said, I've seen it with a different cover actually. I think Americans have a completely different cover to what we have. But yeah, excuse me, I've seen it kind of floating around on social media, so I was very intrigued by it, so I'm glad I read it. And like I said, I did enjoy aspects of this. If you are a fan of coming of age story, you like YA coming of age stories, then I would recommend this. I think you would like it, because like I said, there is like that element of her being a vampire, which is interesting. There's a slight horror aspect to it, because the way she craves blood and describes blood is quite graphic, and there are moments obviously she has to consume blood in order to stay alive, and it does describe them quite graphically. So I would put this like slightly in the horror section, but like, yeah, more like coming of age with a touch of horror, I would say. So if you like coming of age stories, then I definitely would recommend this. If you like full-on vampire novels and you're expecting like, you know, some really interesting story focused on being a vampire, and it might not hit the spot for you, but yeah, definitely more on the coming of age with the twist, I think you would like it. So that's pretty much my thoughts. If you have any questions or comments, then please leave them down below. Let me know what you think of this book, if you're going to give it a try. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on women eating. So as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye guys.